Alright, we're back, and this time we're digging in deep with Transformers Studio Series 86 Scavenger, a bot that was actually quite hard for me to find. I'll break down every detail, transform him while providing some useful tips, compare him to the rest of the Constructicons, new and old, and build even more epic displays using the SS86 Constructicons. All this and more, only at Heroic Nonsense. Let's go. Get ready to take a deep dive into Transformers Studio Series 86 Scavenger in this week's Spotlight, one of the last of the Constructicons to join the team. I don't know about you, but I had a terrible time trying to find him. He is on major backorder, but I was luckily able to randomly find one in the wild. We've already reviewed a bunch of his teammates, so this week we'll pick up where we left off with even more display ideas and scale comparisons, and be sure to check out those previous Constructicon Spotlights to get the entire picture. I'll also discuss a quality issue I came across and an easy fix. Best part, we'll see how he matches up to the original 80s Scavenger and the rest of the Constructicons, and even see some surprise guest appearances. Whether you're collecting him to build Devastator, build a dynamic shelf of Constructicons, or just a plain old fan of this bot, this review has you covered. I always liked Scavenger. He was easy to transform, was a cool looking excavator, and as a bot kinda stood out from the rest. I wouldn't choose him as my favorite, but I did end up playing with him a lot. We also ended up getting the Unite Warriors Devastator version a long time ago, which was the only combiner I really wanted until the Stunticons came out, so I have two separate perspectives on him. As an update to the original 80s version, I think he looks pretty good and does the original justice, hitting all the main notes you'd expect. As an update to the Combiner Wars version, truthfully, he isn't much different, and that's a shame. Aside from a few differences in transformation, you're basically getting the same bot, but smaller, which is fine, but I would have preferred some new engineering that could elevate this guy as a proper Studio Series release. Regardless, he's a key component of Devastator, and so I had to make sure we got him. Overall, I think he looks good, but I do have some nitpicks here and there, which I'll bring up throughout the review. For a start, I really can't decide if I like the elongated waist. I think it's generally fine, but when you focus on it too long, it just seems to become off a bit. I do like the more compact side of him though, and how he incorporates the shovel part the best out of all the iterations I've seen to date. The back seems a bit better proportionally as compared to the front, mostly due to the shovel and excavator arm covering up most of this perspective. If I just focus in on the top portion, I think he looks great. I love that silver finish in the middle, as well as the grayed head design, which represents Scavenger perfectly based off of the 86 movie. You can see how they fixed the shovel portion a bit better here, partially due to the ability for the shovel to move on hinges. I think that posing him actually makes me like him better design-wise, especially with the few points of articulation at the legs, even with the waist being stationary. The gaps in the inner arms are a real miss though. He does balance well for walking, but isn't really that great at running, partially because of the design of his feet, but also because one of my legs is a bit loose at the knee. He can also be easily placed into this position and actually looks quite good this way. You can see here how you can give him a more realistic look by pushing up part of his foot for the back leg. Depending on which way he is facing, my opinion changes a bit, but the fact is, he can balance in a fairly accurate way. So in the end, a nice figure to have and an absolute must if you're building Devastator. I think he really shines when he's placed with the rest of the team though, as we'll see in a bit. Now his vehicle mode has always been my favorite out of the two modes. I just always had a thing for excavators, especially ones that were part of the Decepticon team. And I think they did a nice update here to both the original and the Combiner Wars one. A bit of a lack of detail in terms of paint applications, but the best version of his tracks I think I've ever seen for him. He's also mostly clean throughout this mode with only a small break in the design on the back portion of the tracks where the joints meet. Otherwise, I really like his look here. Only thing that would have made him perfect would be if those tracks moved. So the design is quite nice and detailed enough for a figure of this size, minus some additional paint I would have liked to have seen. From the front, he looks a bit small and less impressive, but at least the cab has a colored in window and windshield wiper. The tracks definitely look the best, and perhaps I'd have been a bit more impressed if they gave him a dirtier paint job or highlights to add some realism. Painting some more features onto the arms, specifically around the mechanical elements, would have been nice to see as well. He has a small gap on the body where the shovel arm goes when transformed, but it's incorporated pretty seamlessly. The back is also very clean, minus those joints I called out earlier, but it does highlight one of my other small issues with it, that being the paint application they use for the hands versus the rest of the body, which really stands out. The mechanical arm comes detached from the toy in package, which means you can leave it off. Once on, it can however rotate and bend at all these different spots along the arm. The laser can be placed here for storage, though I prefer to leave it off. The only other place I could find for it that blends in way better is right here in this position, though it doesn't attach to anything and is just sitting there loose. So my biggest issue with this figure is the quality control, which is something I heard from others as well, and is why I'm showing you my pliers, as there's a fix that worked for me at least. When transforming the figure, this part here needs to fit into a slot on the side. Mine, however, was too big to easily fit in and left a big gap. I took a towel as to not damage the plastic, and used my pliers to push the components tighter together so it could fit in, which it did, though it does cause a bit of trouble once in a while. Hopefully yours doesn't have the same issue. Minus that quality issue, I am really happy with this vehicle mode for Scavenger, and will show you in my final Studio Series 86 Constructicon Spotlight how he looks all put together as part of Devastator. Now this is where these guys really shine when you have them all together, and I generally think they scale fairly well in construction vehicle mode. I absolutely love the Constructicons, especially when they're together, and they're definitely one of the most cohesive looking combiners out there. One by one, they all look fantastic next to Scavenger, though perhaps he could have been slightly bigger. I don't think this is necessarily the case, but just have a feeling he'd look a bit more impressive slightly scaled up. That may have ultimately affected how he combines though. The side view also looks excellent, with Scavenger being the cleanest looking Constructicon in my opinion. I think my favorites so far, until we open Mixmaster, are still Hook and Scrapper though. In robot mode, they look equally as impressive, really showcasing the team element of these combiners that I think made them so special and unique. They're also all about the same size, though Long Haul and Hook are understandably the taller ones of the bunch. In the end, this is what a combiner team should look like, as if they were forged together and meant to combine right from the start. Such great stories and lore with these guys also helps make any display come alive. Now let's jump to the Unite Warriors, or as it was known here in North America, Combiner Wars version of Scavenger, where we can immediately notice a difference in color. Of course, size is the other major difference with these two. Otherwise, they're essentially the same figure from a design perspective. With Unite Warriors Scavenger having some nice paint applications, which were unique to this version from that time period, though missing the detail in the treads. The back of Studio Series 86 Scavenger is way cleaner, which I think was needed. The back of Combiner Wars Scavenger really doesn't look great at all. As for the top-down view, hard to notice many differences other than slight mold updates here and there. As for how he scales with other non-Constructicon Studio Series bots, pretty good, but definitely on the smaller side and less premium looking. The great thing is though that if you have Combiner Wars Scavenger, you can always display him next to other bots in the series, since he is essentially the same figure scaled up, and use SS86 Scavenger for the bot or Devastator displays. I do wish they had included some wheels on Studio Series 86 Scavenger like they did for Combiner Wars Scavenger. Not a deal breaker, but definitely something that would have increased playability. However, where SS86 Scavenger does come up on top is the ability to move the shovel for the full range of motion. The Combiner Wars one is stationary and completely molded into the arm. As for robot mode, they really have similar designs. The only major differences other than small molded details here and there are around the waist and the ability to extend Combiner Wars Scavenger's legs. I think I prefer Studio Series 86 Scavenger's look in the end. What do you guys think? Similar side view with the obvious upgrade to Studio Series 86 Scavenger's shovel, which tucks away much better. No real difference from the back however, but you can see how they tried to hide the arm gap on SS86 Scavenger by moving it to the side. Would have been nice to have the extra painted detail up here, but as for the head, it's pretty much aesthetically identical. And here's a bit of a fun one, our other Transformers passion these days, Transformer Blokees. If you haven't picked any of these up yet, you're missing out. They're truly tons of fun to build and look great, and they're completely addictive, which I guess could be considered a problem. They're a bit on the exaggerated side of things, but not by much. And because they don't transform, you can give them really nice and proportionate designs. These Defender versions are also a total blast. If any of you have started collecting them, let the community know in the comments section what you think of them. To be honest, I had no interest in them until we bought our first one, but once you have them in your hands, you see why they're so much fun. Did you think I'd skip the most important comparison? No way. I love my original Constructicons and probably played with them the most. The general overall design cues are there, and it's amazing to see how much details from the original were actually captured, specifically around the chest and leg areas. I know the scoop can be placed in different ways on the original, but all of them don't really look that great. 100% improvement with Studio Series 86 Scavenger. The back of the 80 Scavenger is a bit boxier though, and I think I might prefer it. You definitely don't see the front inward sweep of the chest from behind like you do with the Studio Series 86 version. Now this is where it all comes together, the entire set of both versions, minus Mixmaster, which we'll look at soon. And wow, do they look incredible set up this way. I would even consider displaying them this way if I didn't plan on combining them into Devastator. As for the construction vehicle mode, they look very similar. I truly like both versions. The original did have the added bonus of being able to swivel 360 degrees though, and I like the bigger Decepticon symbol. However, in the end, they both hit the mark as great representations of real-world Earth-based excavators. It is amazing to see how small all the original Constructicons were though. Still, in my mind, they were huge, as was Devastator, just like in the cartoon and movie. In the end, I'm so happy my parents kept all of my toys from when I was a kid. You can't beat having the originals that you had so many great memories with and sharing them and the newer updated versions with the next generation. What a great time to be a collector. Alright, onto the transformation, which isn't actually that complicated. So let's just start right away with the easiest part, which is lifting up the arm and then opening up the chest to rotate in the head 180 degrees and close it back up. Then we'll just flip it around and we'll open this part up. It's tabbed in on the side. Now this part is a little tricky, so what you want to do is lift it up a bit like that. Of course, you got to close the fist, and then you want to pull it down so that it lines up with the upper shoulder, and then you just close up the cab part. Now here, where I was just showing is where I have that issue, that quality issue, but I fixed it mostly and it fits right in now. And then here you just got to tab this part in. It takes a little bit of work. I'll get it any second now. You just got to line it up. There we go. And we'll just do the same thing on this side. Just fold up the fist. Here you can just push it up right into place, and then it just goes down easier because you don't have that cab portion. And here you can see the tab. You just got to tab it in place, and there you go. Nice and tight and compact. So now as for the legs, we're going to close up the feet. And another little trick, you got to kind of pull this out a bit, and you see that spot, you're going to kind of rotate it at a 45-degree angle right into that big tab. We'll do the same here. You see there's a spot right there, and we're just going to push it in and then click it from the front. There's some other tabs up there, smaller ones. And there you have it, Scavenger transformed and ready to roll out, Decepticon style. So we've already done several reviews of the Studio Series Constructicons as part of this Constructicon series, as well as other bot reviews, so I have plenty of display ideas I've already shared throughout these spotlights. However, you can always have more, so here we go. The last one is from the cartoon. Can you guess which episode? As for these, having the Constructicons posed in an action shot is definitely the way to go. They just look so amazing together. It's really a fun set to have, and I believe they'll be releasing the whole set at some point in case you weren't able to pick them up individually. The Constructicons will always be my favorite combiners for sure, but this episode isn't just about me. So do you guys have any fond memories of the Constructicons growing up? Is this a set you want or have already and love? Let us know. And by the way, the Constructicons being called into battle is always a winning shot. How about the Constructicons with Studio Series Megatron? I think they look fantastic and I believe work scale-wise as well. I always saw the Constructicons as Megatron's team, and so for me, this is a perfect setup. But they did survive the opening battle with the Autobots from the movie, so this one with Galvatron is an equally cool display idea to throw in there. Made even better by adding in Cyclonus and Scourge, all three of whom I feel are Studio Series level figures. Who do you prefer with the Constructicons, Megatron or Galvatron? Now this is an iconic shot, you've got to know where this one has come from. While I prefer the Constructicons displayed in bot mode together, they do look really great together in vehicle mode as well, especially as they rumble into battle, kicking up smoke everywhere. Knowing that once they stop, there's a chance they'll merge and form Devastator. But equally iconic are the Constructicons working away for Megatron, building space bridges and other construction projects. Though mining for Energon is still the best way in my opinion to display these guys. These Energon cubes come with some of the Blokees figures and they are perfect size for these displays. I really like using these cubes in this way, perfect for the Constructicons. Though this is probably my favorite add-on, Frenzy guiding the Constructicons. While Rumble breaks down some rocks exposing more energy in the background. This is just one idea incorporating some of the other releases. Do you have any others? For a very action-packed and dynamic pose using the Constructicons? Why not have them attacking Optimus as they surround him, Scavenger leading the charge to flip him over? This is a totally fun display idea, especially if you want to keep the Constructicons as well as Optimus in vehicle mode. Like I said, so many display ideas, many of which I've showcased in previous videos, but there's always more, so let's see what Mixmaster brings next. Scavenger came in a very small box, so not much to write home about other than the fact that the illustration of him in both modes is really cool, and makes Scavenger look really cool as well. I'm not sure what they were thinking of for this side panel art, kinda a waste of a panel to be honest. The back panel design is very similar to the other ones we've seen for this Studio Series Constructicon lineup. And wrapping this section all up with a great shot of Devastator, as we've seen before. So that brings us to the end of this week's Transformers-centric spotlight. Hope you enjoyed and got a kick out of seeing a whole bunch of Constructicons, new and old. We still have Mixmaster to do and the combined form with Devastator, all of which we'll get to shortly, so please make sure to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss those spotlights. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's all such heroic nonsense in the end.
Bravo!